Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time we're going to be looking at something that I think a lot of women in leadership positions or aspiring to be really grapple with, how nonverbal behavior can really make or break how people see your power.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how, even just subtle cues, like a posture shift, a certain look, even just your facial expression can really make all the difference in how people perceive your authority.
And to really get into the nitty-gritty of this, we're going to be diving into a 2001 research study by Herman Iguenes and Christine Henlow. It was published in the Journal of Social Psychology.
Oh, yeah, this is a great one to look at because it uses really specific examples to show how these dynamics can impact women's experiences in the workplace.
It seems pretty intuitive that, your nonverbal behavior would influence how people see you. But I'm curious about how that plays out specifically for women. Like what's considered powerful for a man isn't always seen the same way when a woman does it right.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what this study gets at. And to understand their findings, it helps to know how they defined power. They used this framework by French and Raven, which outlines different bases of power. Two of the key ones they looked at were coercive power, which is basically the ability to punish, and referent power, which is based on being liked and admired.
Okay, so did they like put people in a boardroom with hidden cameras and watch how they interacted?
Not quite. They used these short stories called vignettes. Each one featured a female employee, Mary, interacting with a male employee, John. And they changed up Mary's nonverbal cues in each one, things like her eye contact, facial expressions, and posture. Then they had people read the vignettes and rate Mary on those different power bases.
Oh, sneaky. So what kind of impact did these seemingly small changes have?
One of the findings that surprised me the most was the effect of direct eye contact. When Mary maintained direct eye contact, it actually made people rate her higher on coercive power.
That's interesting. You'd think eye contact would be seen as a good thing,
Yeah.
confident, assertive.
Right, and especially because previous research actually found that direct eye contact made men seem more credible. But for women, this study suggests it might be interpreted as aggressive or even intimidating.
Yeah, it's almost like women are held to a different standard when it comes to these nonverbal cues. Like if they come across as too assertive, they risk being perceived negatively.
Exactly, and it doesn't stop there. The study also found that if Mary had a relaxed facial expression, she was seen as less powerful overall.
So she can't be too assertive with her eye contact, and she can't appear too relaxed either. It seems like a real catch-22 for women in leadership.
Unfortunately, it often is, and the study authors connected this back to what we know about social roles. There are different expectations for how women should act compared to men, and that can really hold them back in leadership positions.
And this isn't just some abstract concept. This has real implications for women in the workplace. I mean, if even subtle things like eye contact or a facial expression can be misinterpreted, it's no wonder there are still barriers for women reaching leadership positions.
Absolutely. It really shines a light on how these seemingly small things can become big obstacles, especially for women.
Yeah, and it really makes you wonder, if women are constantly having to navigate these unspoken rules, how can they break through and be seen as the powerful leaders they are?
That's the million-dollar question, especially if there's no, one-size-fits-all approach.
Uh,
Are there certain expressions or behaviors that project both warmth and authority?
that's something researchers are still exploring, and it's likely to vary depending on, the specific context. But I think the first step is simply raising awareness.
So women need to be more aware of how their nonverbal communication might be coming across.
Yes, but it's not just about women changing their behavior. It's about everyone becoming more aware of these subtle cues and how they might be contributing to a double standard.
So less what's wrong with her, and more like, hold on, are we judging women more harshly than men for the same behaviors? Precisely. And that's where systemic change comes in. We need to create workplaces where women aren't penalized for expressing their leadership authentically, even if it doesn't fit a traditional mold.
What would that look like in practice? Like,
Mm.
how can organizations help address this?
Well, one thing companies can do is offer training on unconscious bias. It helps people recognize those deep-seated stereotypes that can lead to unfair judgments.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that would be helpful.
Hmm.
It's about creating a culture where women aren't just allowed to lead, but are encouraged to lead in their own way.
Exactly. It's about valuing different leadership styles, not just trying to fit everyone into the same box. And representation matters too. The more we see women in leadership roles, the more those unconscious biases start to break down.
Right. It's like, if she can do it, I can do it. It gives
Ah.
other women permission to step into those roles and lead authentically.
And for men in leadership positions, It's about being aware of how their own nonverbal cues might be impacting the women they work with. Are they giving women the same space to speak up and share their ideas? Are they acknowledging their contributions?
Yeah, it's like you were saying before, it's not just about women fixing themselves, it's about all of us working together to create a more level playing field.
And I think this research is a great jumping off point for those conversations. It's not about telling women how to behave, it's about shedding light on these often invisible dynamics so we can start to dismantle them.
Knowledge is power, right?
Right.
The more we understand about these subtle biases, the better we can navigate them, both personally and within our organizations. But I'm also thinking these nonverbal dynamics probably go way beyond just women in leadership, don't they?
Absolutely. Think about any situation where there's a power imbalance. A
Mhm.
teacher and student, a doctor and patient, even parent and child. Nonverbal cues can play a huge role in how those interactions unfold.
Yeah, it really makes you think about all the subtle ways these dynamics might be playing out in our everyday lives.
Yeah.
So with all this in mind, what are some things that our listeners can do to apply this knowledge?
Well, becoming more aware of your own nonverbal behavior is a great place to start. Do you tend to make yourself smaller in meetings? Maybe you come on too strong without realizing it. Just noticing those patterns is a big step.
Yeah, self-awareness is so key.
Yeah.
And what about like learning to read other people's nonverbal cues better?
Mm-hmm. Really focusing on active listening can help with that. You know, don't just hear the words, but pay attention to their tone of voice. Facial expressions, body language. It's like this whole other level of communication that's going on beneath the surface.
Yeah, the more attuned we are to those subtle signals, the better we can understand what's really being said.
Exactly. It can help you avoid misunderstandings, build stronger relationships, navigate all those tricky situations that pop up at work.
I feel like this deep dive has been so eye-opening for me. I'm already noticing things I hadn't really paid attention to before.
That's great to hear. It really is about those small, seemingly insignificant things making a huge difference.
So as we wrap up, let's think back to that study by Gwyneth and Henlo. The researchers manipulated how a woman named Mary acted in different scenarios, and then they asked people to rate her on those different types of power. One of the most interesting findings was that when Mary used direct eye contact, it made people think of her as more coercive, more likely to punish.
Right, and that's so different from what we see with men, where direct eye contact tends to boost their credibility.
Exactly. It's like there's this unspoken rule book for how women should act, especially if they want to be seen as leaders. But if they act too assertively, they risk being perceived negatively.
Right.
And it goes even further. The study also found that if Mary had a more relaxed expression, she was seen as less powerful overall.
Yeah.
So it's like she's stuck between a rock and a hard place. She can't be too assertive, but she can't appear too relaxed either. It seems like a real double bind.
And unfortunately, that's the reality a lot of women face, especially in leadership positions.
It's frustrating, but it's also why this conversation is so important. You know, the more we talk about these dynamics, the more we can raise awareness and start to challenge those outdated notions of what a leader should look like.
And remember, it's not just about women changing their behavior. It's about all of us working together to create a more equitable and inclusive environment where everyone can lead authentically. So as you head back out into the world, think about the workplaces you've been in, the teams you've been a part of. How can a deeper understanding of these dynamics